The world is now on a dangerous new path, On February 28, 2026, a simmering conflict erupted into open warfare. The United States and Israel launched a series of joint military strikes across Iran. These attacks, codenamed Operation Epic Fury, targeted multiple locations including the capital city of Tehran. U.S. President Donald Trump announced them as major combat operations, marking a severe escalation. Weeks of rising tensions had preceded this, and stalled negotiations over Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs were failing. The international community watched with grave concern as threats turned into direct military confrontation, and the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East was altered. The initial strikes were swift and devastatingly precise. Official confirmations from the U.S. and Israel said the attacks hit Iran's leadership. Iranian state media later confirmed that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in the strikes on Tehran. The most immediate and heartbreaking consequence of this conflict is the immense suffering of civilians. The violence is not confined to military targets, government buildings. It is spilled into the streets, homes of ordinary people. In the initial strikes on Iran, a harrowing report from state media described an attack that struck an elementary school in the southern part of the country. This single incident resulted in the deaths of scores of students, a tragedy that highlights the indiscriminate nature of modern warfare. These children paid the ultimate price. Such events create deep and lasting wounds within a society, fueling cycles of anger and grief for generations. The pain is not one-sided. Iran's retaliatory strikes have also brought death and fear to civilians across the region. In Israel, a woman in her 50s was killed. Reports indicated 121 other people were injured in the missile barrage. In Manama, Bahrain, several residential buildings were hit by errant missiles or debris. Civil defense forces were seen engaged in frantic firefighting and rescue operations, pulling people from the rubble. These scenes of chaos in cities far from the initial strikes show how quickly the conflict can spread, turning peaceful urban centers into front lines, placing countless innocent lives in grave danger. The war's economic impact began almost instantly. Its epicenter, the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global choke point. This narrow waterway is the jugular vein of the world's energy supply. It connects major Gulf oil producers to the open ocean, Saudi Arabia. It connects major Gulf oil producers to the open ocean, UAE. It connects major Gulf oil producers to the open ocean, Iraq. It connects major Gulf oil producers to the open ocean, Iran. After retaliatory strikes, Iran warned sea vessels the strait could be closed. That single threat can send catastrophic shockwaves through the global economy. About 1/5 of the world's oil consumption passes through this strait every day. Closure or higher transit risk, dramatic spike in global oil prices. When supply is threatened, world oil prices skyrocket. This isn't abstract. It becomes real costs for people everywhere. Higher oil prices mean you pay more to fill your car. Transport costs rise, pushing prices up for groceries. And for electronics, businesses dependent on fuel face soaring operational costs, causing layoffs and slower growth. Iran's economy would be hit especially hard. It was already strained by years of international sanctions. Oil exports are Iran's main revenue. War could halt them entirely. The war between the United States and Iran is rapidly reshaping global politics and straining the very fabric of international order. Alliances that once seemed stable are now being tested under immense pressure. Major world powers are watching closely. Russia-China leaders worldwide have issued stark warnings. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke of grave consequences for international peace and security. In Russia, Dmitry Medvedev accused Washington of using negotiations as a cover, signaling a deepening divide and a breakdown in diplomatic trust. This conflict risks creating a dangerous political vacuum. Extremist groups are poised to exploit it. ISIS, Al-Qaeda. Iran responded with a furious, widespread counterattack. It launched massive missile strikes targeting U.S. assets across the Gulf. The U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was reportedly targeted. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar was also attacked. Reports said Iran launched 137 ballistic missiles in a single coordinated barrage. Missile defenses engaged, reportedly destroying 132 incoming missiles. Still, the attacks caused damage and terror, leaving the region teetering on the brink of full-scale war. Strikes on U.S. bases in allied countries complicated diplomacy and put pressure on their governments. Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, each reacted by temporarily closing their airspace and condemning the attacks on their sovereign territories. The world now holds its breath, waiting for the next move in this rapidly escalating cycle of violence. This escalation has triggered the beginning of what could become a massive humanitarian crisis. As bombs fall and cities become battlegrounds, families are forced to make an impossible choice: stay and risk death, or flee with nothing into an uncertain future. Displacement creates an urgent need for shelter, food, clean water, medical care. International aid organizations may find their access severely restricted by closed borders. Dangerous travel conditions and the political complexities of the conflict. Hospitals, already strained by casualties, could soon become completely overwhelmed, unable to provide even basic care for the sick and injured. The fighting is also sending tremors of instability throughout the entire Middle East. Iran has a network of allies and proxy forces across the region: Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. These groups could be activated, opening up new fronts, drawing more countries into the vortex of violence. Nations hosting U.S. military bases like Qatar and Bahrain now find themselves directly in the line of fire, facing a difficult balancing act between their alliance with the U.S. and the threat of further attacks from Iran. The danger is that a direct war between two nations could ignite numerous smaller conflicts, destabilizing the whole region. The risk of the war spreading beyond its current boundaries is exceptionally high. Initial strikes have already pulled in Bahrain, Qatar, Israel. Iran's potential use of proxies in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen could ignite multiple fronts simultaneously. A miscalculation, a stray missile, a deliberate attack on a neighboring country's oil facility could easily draw new nations into the fight. The longer the war continues, the greater the chance it spirals into a wider conflagration with devastating and unpredictable consequences for global stability. In summary, continued military action is fraught with peril for all humanity. The human cost is measured in lost lives, shattered communities. The economic shock will be felt through higher prices, diminished prosperity. The political fallout threatens to dismantle decades of international cooperation and unleash new waves of instability and extremism. The most urgent priority must be a turn toward diplomacy and de-escalation. World leaders must exert all possible pressure to halt the cycle of retaliation. Forge a path back to the negotiating table and ensure humanitarian aid can reach innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. The strikes created a massive power vacuum at the heart of the Iranian state. Further reports named other key figures believed killed: Defense Minister Amir Nasirzadeh, Revolutionary Guards Commander Mohammad Pakpour. That removed the country's ultimate authority figure. The world now holds its breath, waiting for the next move in this rapidly escalating cycle of violence. Damage to ports, damage to refineries, damage to infrastructure would cost billions and take years to repair. Lost oil income would likely crash Iran's currency, causing hyperinflation and a deeper humanitarian crisis. Military costs for all parties are astronomical and unsustainable. U.S. deployment and maintenance, aircraft carriers. U.S. deployment and maintenance, bombers. U.S. deployment and maintenance, thousands of soldiers. Those funds could otherwise go to healthcare, infrastructure, or education. Every missile fired,